Hi, everyone, and thanks for checking out this movie review. So, today we'll be continuing with my current horror franchise for the month of September, which is the Halloween franchise. And today we're up to the 10th film out of 11 so far in the series, soon to be 12 in about 3 weeks here. So, today we're going to take a look at Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 from 2009, which is a very divisive film among Halloween fans. Um, so once again, I have the unrated director's cut of the movie. So that's the review that I'll be making is off of this movie. I'll have to get the theatrical cuts for both Halloween 1 and 2 at some point and view those. But for right now, this is all I've got. So yeah, we're going to take a look at the unrated director's cut of Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. So let's just go ahead and get into it. I'll start with the setup and the premise of the movie, the cast, and then I'll get into my thoughts and reviews, which will contain spoilers. So, Halloween 2 is a 2009 American slasher film written, directed, and produced by Rob Zombie. The film is a sequel to Zombie's 2007 remake of 1978's Halloween and the 10th installment in the Halloween franchise. Picking up where the 2007 film ended and then jumping ahead 2 years, Halloween 2 follows Laurie Strode as she deals with the aftermath of the previous film's events. Dr. Loomis, who is trying to capitalize on those events by publishing a new book that chronicles everything that happened, and Michael Myers as he continues his search for Laurie so that he can reunite with his sister. For Halloween 2, Zombie decided to focus more on the connection between Strode and Myers and the idea that they share similar psychological problems. So basically, the film picks up at the beginning during the time in Smith's Grove Sanitarium. A young Michael Myers is visited by his mother, Deborah, who gives him a white horse statue as a gift. 15 years later, Laurie Strode is wandering around in shock after having shot an adult Michael. Sheriff Lee Brackett finds Laurie and takes her to the hospital. Meanwhile, the paramedics pick up Annie Brackett and Michael's psychiatrist, Dr. Sam Loomis, who survived being attacked by Michael, and also takes him to the hospital. Michael's body is taken in another ambulance when the driver has a traffic accident. Michael awakens and escapes, killing a paramedic injured in the accident. So then we cut to 2 years later. Laurie is now living with the Brackets. Michael has been missing and is presumed dead. While Laurie deals with her trauma, Dr. Loomis has chosen to turn the event into an opportunity to write another book. Elsewhere, Michael, who's still alive and living as a drifter, has been having visions of his mother's ghost and younger version of himself, who instruct him to reunite with Laurie. Michael arrives at a farm and kills the owners before he sets off to Haddonfield. As Michael travels to Haddonfield, Laurie begins having hallucinations that mirrored Michael's past. When Loomis's book is released, Laurie discovers she is really Angel Myers, Michael's long lost sister. So yeah, that's kind of the setup and the premise of the film. Cast wise, it's pretty similar to the previous movie. We got Scout Taylor Compton as Laurie Strode slash Angel Myers, Malcolm McDowell as Samuel Loomis, Tyler Main as Michael Myers, Sherry Moon Zombie as Deborah Myers, Brad Dourif as Sheriff Lee Brackett, Danielle Harris as Annie Brackett, and B. Grant as Myra Rockwell, Laurie's new friend. So yeah, that's Halloween, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 from 2009 in a nutshell. So I went into this movie not really expecting too much because, in part, because of the comments and the. Usually, when I see people rank the Halloween films, this one, along with Resurrection, are at the bottom of just about every list that I've seen. Not everybody. There are people that are fans of this movie. Um, I have to say, I don't hate this movie. That's not to say that it isn't a flawed movie because it certainly is. But I actually like some of the direction that Rob Zombie took here. I like the fact that it's not a shot-for-shot remake, as I mentioned with his first Halloween film. It's his version, it's his style. So yeah, let's just get into it. We'll start with the pros. I really enjoyed the first 20-25 minutes of this film. Um, despite some of it being a dream sequence. Now, some people, when they talk about it, exaggerate and say the whole first half hour or so was a dream sequence. Well, that's not true. About 10 minutes was a dream sequence. Um, right up until everything is for real, right up until Michael escapes from the crashed vehicle and kills the paramedic. That's all real. It's when Laurie wakes up in the hospital then that ends up being a dream. But and normally I'm like a lot of people, I don't like dream sequences in movies because to me it's just cheap, it's lazy. You know, it tries it's kind of a ripoff because it gets the viewer to invest in something that didn't actually happen. But in this case, I understand it, and I think it works pretty well because a lot of this movie is about Laurie's trauma and Laurie's psychological downfall, if you will, from the events of the first movie as well as what happens in this movie. So the dream sequence does a good job of tying into Laurie's trauma. I thought Zombie did a really good job there with that whole sequence and subverting expectations. At first, you think it's kind of going to be like the original Halloween 2 with the hospital setting and everything. And all of a sudden, it's like, no, we're going in a different direction. And I kind of like that. I'll be honest with you. I think it's a good setup for what we ultimately got in this movie, the whole dream sequence. Um, I think Danielle Harris and Brad Dourif's characters have much more to do in this movie. They're much more important than the previous movie. I think they both give good performances, especially Brad Dourif. I think he particularly gives a great heartfelt performance in this movie. You know, in the first movie they were there, but they were more side characters. It really focused on Michael and from the child to becoming Michael Myers as an adult and everything that went along with that. And they were more side characters in this movie, though they're really important to the overall story. And yeah, Brad Dourif gives a great performance. Danielle Harris is Annie. This is kind of what I wanted from Annie and her and Danielle Harris in the first movie, and it just wasn't written in that movie. But they kind of get the payoff here, so that was good to see. I think Scout Taylor Compton, she gets a lot of crap from people, but I actually think if you look at what this movie was trying to be and what happened in the first movie, I think she actually gives a good performance in this movie. I think she's a good actress. I think she plays the troubled and traumatic victim pretty well. You know, she's a PTSD victim questioning her own sanity. Even like in the midway through this movie, before she has her complete downfall. I don't know. I think she does a good job. I mean, I know she's annoying at times with her when she's like fighting and some of her verbal yelling and cursing and stuff. But I mean, some of that's Rob Zombie's writing once again. But I think as a performance as an actress, I think she does really well here. And it's kind of her movie, of course, as I mentioned before. I mean, Michael Myers obviously is there and he's a big part of it, along with some of the other characters I mentioned, like Sheriff Brackett and Annie. But this is really about Laurie Strode in a lot of ways, more so than the first movie. So she has to give a good performance, and I think she does. I really do. Um, Got to talk about my favorite scene, which is kind of midway through the movie, maybe a little earlier than that, where the the hillbilly farmers in the truck going through the field, and they run into to Michael the drifter, um, and they basically beat him down to the ground, and they're getting back in their truck talking smack, and Michael gets up and he slips the mask on. It's just such a badass scene, and you just knew what was going to happen. That's my favorite scene of the movie, quite frankly. And of course, he does what Myers does, which is basically end all three of their lives in a fairly quick order. It's just really badass. Once again, there's a lot of brutal, violent kills in this movie, so if that's your thing, then you won't be disappointed, as you tend to get in Rob Zombie movies. In some ways, they're even more brutal in this movie, especially there's one kill of the nurse played by what's the gal's name from Octavia Spencer, where she plays a nurse in the dream sequence of this movie, and he must stab her about 30 times. It feels like it's just very violent and brutal. Um, I think the whole ascending into madness by Laurie is great. As I mentioned, I think Scout Taylor Compton does a good job there. I think that part is part of the Rob Zombie vision. I think works pretty well. Um, Also, the reveal of Laurie finding out who she really is, which is Angel Myers through Loomis's book, I think has a nice tie there because for a while you're like, why is Loomis on this book tour and why is his character changed so much? But the way they tie it into the book coming back to Haddonfield and first Sheriff Brackett discovers it, and then, but ultimately he can't warn Laurie in time and she ends up seeing it at the bookstore and she just completely loses it basically. And yeah, I think that reveal's done really well because if you remember in the first two movies, we never really like Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie in the second movie. She never actually finds out that Michael is her brother and that she was adopted. You don't pick up until H2O with her on that, and then of course it's been 20 years. She already knows. So we don't really get that reveal, and I kind of like that aspect of the of this remake here that Zombie has. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. Getting her reaction. The final scene where Laurie is isolated and smiles with the white horse approaching. I think that's really creepy and effective. I know the ending kind of has a different version for the theatrical cut of this movie, which again, just like the first one, I'm going to have to get those cuts so I can watch the differences because I do have a lot of people say the theatrical cuts are actually better. Which at first I was like, how can that be? Because usually the director's cut on rated is better. But when you consider Rob Zombie's the director and the writer, it kind of makes sense because these versions, the unrated director's cuts, are obviously going to have more dialogue, which is not a good thing when it comes to Rob Zombie. So I kind of get it. So I'm definitely going to have to check those out because I know that the ending, not the very end, but like the ending during the big confrontation there with Loomis, Laurie, and Michael and Sheriff Brackett goes down differently in the theatrical version. So, but I can only review it on what I saw. And basically, he pushes Loomis out of that little shed that they're in. He stabs him and yells, "Die!" which I'll get into in a few minutes here. And then Lori goes to stab Loomis. It appears she grabs the knife. It makes sense that she'd be pissed at him with what basically was profiting off her trauma and psychological downfall. And then they shoot her. Obviously, they don't kill her because then it cuts to that scene I just talked about. I think it's really creepy. I think Scout Taylor Compton has a really creepy smile there, and it kind of tells you that she's basically the killer now. A little bit of an homage to Halloween 4, the end of that movie, to a certain extent. So I thought that was effective. She's become the new Michael Myers, if you will. I actually like the mask of Myers, which he doesn't wear a lot in this movie, and when he does wear it, it's torn, especially towards the end of the movie. I actually think, in a weird way, that works for the Rob Zombie movies. I don't think I'd like it as much in the regular non-Rob Zombie Halloween movies, but it just kind of fits the style and the tone of his movies. And it also looks creepy. There's times where the mask, like at the beginning during the dream sequence when it's raining outside, really good atmosphere there, by the way. They do a really good job with the atmosphere there during that sequence outside the hospital where the water's actually dripping down. He just looks so badass there when he's looking through the window. And then also at the end with the torn mask, I just think that's really effective. And once again, Tyler Mane is on point playing this character. I think he's really effective for this movie. Even when he has the hobo look, he's intimidating as hell because of his size and just his movement and the way he plays it. Just really enjoy it. Um, so yeah, those are my pros for the movie. Probably more than you were expecting, more than other people have. I do have cons though to this movie. It's definitely not a perfect Halloween movie. Once again, and this might be more related to the director's cut, but there's too much bad dialogue by the characters, especially when Laurie and Annie are fighting like midway, like the first half of the movie, especially. It's just F bombs and cursing and just kind of annoying. I don't know. It's just bad dialogue. It doesn't, and we still get the hillbillies that do that too. The two ambulance drivers that are taking Michael before they crash out of town there, and then the farmers. It's typical Rob Zombie dialogue. They really needed an F counter for this movie because the amount of F bombs that are dropped, especially by the guy that crashes the truck at the beginning of the movie. He's got to think about how many F bombs he's supposed to drop. It looks like you could tell he's thinking deep about it. It's like, why? I mean, I'm not offended by the F word. I mean, that's part of any Halloween movie, part of most horror movies, especially R-rated or above. But to just have them constantly repeated, it's like, why? I mean, what are you trying to? You're trying to see if you can break the count for the most F bombs in a movie. I'm not sure. Obviously, a big con is the Loomis character in this movie being completely different. He's basically a greedy a hole in this movie, and there's really no transition into that. And we leave him at the end of the first movie. Um, he's trying to help Laurie. He's trying to intervene and sacrificing himself and just a really good doctor, even though he wasn't as good as Donald Pleasance, as I mentioned, his portrayal. But in this movie, yeah, he's just a completely unlikable character, and that's okay as long as we kind of have some context and transition into that. But we don't get any. He does try to redeem himself a little bit at the end, but of course, then everybody wants to kill him, not just Michael, which when you think about it, it's kind of funny. Like everybody wants to stab him. The sheriff, I'm sure Annie would have if she knew what was going on and was still alive. Obviously, Laurie did, Michael did. But yeah, he just, I don't know. That character didn't make any sense to me in this movie. Michael speaking the word die at the end of this movie, which again, I understand he only does in the director's cut, the unrated version that I'm reviewing here, not the theatrical cut. So I'm only speaking to that. But Michael Myers should never talk, especially when you've set it up in the first Rob Zombie movie that he talks as a kid and then he just stops and doesn't talk again. So for him to say die as he stabs Loomis at the end of this movie is like, oh, it's just one of those moments you shake your head with your hands over your eyes and very cringe. Also, I'm not a big fan of the grunts either. It doesn't bother me as much when he's stabbing people and grunting. I mean, it doesn't bother me as much because it fits in the Rob Zombie versions of these movies. Now, if he did it in like, like the George P. Wilbur Myers movies or the other non-zombie Halloween movies, it would bother me more. That doesn't bother me as much, but him speaking the word die does bother me. That's just not necessary. But the grunts still aren't my favorite, but I understand for these movies I can overlook it a little bit more. All the white horse metaphorical bullshit, basically, all those scenes are a little too much. They're forced, and I think they're forced so that he can once again get Sherry Moon Zombie into this movie, who died in the first movie. They have to have some kind of prenuptial agreement deal where she's got to be in all of his movies that he does because he really forces her into this, and so we get a lot of the white horse with young Michael Myers and Sherry Moon Zombie as Deborah Myers again, who's dead, but she's back as a ghost. And yeah, that whole thing doesn't work for me. That's just stupid. This doesn't. I understand where people say this doesn't feel like a Halloween movie. Of all the Halloween movies with Michael Myers, so not counting Part Three, this is the one that feels least like a typical Halloween movie that you'd be expecting going into it. I agree with that. It's more of a psychological character study, but I actually kind of enjoyed that. I enjoy that different direction. But yeah, I can understand it's not your typical Halloween slasher. Of all the Michael Myers ones, it's the least from that respect. Um, Where's the young actor that played Myers in the first movie? It's only been 2 years. Did they have some kind of contract dispute? Because you get Kid Myers a lot in this movie as a ghost, along with Deborah Myers, and he's played by some other kid now. It's like I don't know if they had the kid that played Myers as a kid in the first movie just didn't want to come back, or if they had some sort of problem or whatever. But boy, that was a big miss there because this kid was not convincing as at all by the young Michael Myers, and so they really missed the original actor that played that part from the previous Rob Zombie movie. And then the other thing, which kind of goes back to what I don't like about the Rob Zombie Halloween movies, is they explain too much, and in this case, Myers being willed by his mom, his dead mom, and controlled basically to do what she says, what she wants, etc., how she wants it. Michael Myers should not be controlled by anyone. Just like in Halloween 6, just like these Rob Zombie movies, he's evil. Evil isn't controlled by anybody, not even your family members, not even your own mom. So that's pretty much all I've got for pros and cons for Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. End of the day, I don't think this movie's as bad as a lot of people say. It's not perfect. It's not even great. I would say it's another mixed bag Halloween movie. In some ways, I do enjoy it a little bit more than Rob Zombie's first Halloween movie. But in some ways, I enjoy it a little bit less because it's not a typical Halloween slasher. I'm really on the fence about what score to give it. I think at this point, I'm 7 to 7.5 out of 10 is where I'm leaning, but I think, oh hell, I'm going to give it a 7.5. Let's live dangerously, man. No, I do. I enjoy aspects of this movie. The first 20 minutes, I don't care that it's a dream sequence. It works in this movie. Scout Taylor Compton's performance, the brutality of of Myers, the look of him, and the very ending. I enjoyed all that enough. It warrants a 7.5 out of 10. Go ahead and comment down below, guys. Let me know what you think about Rob Zombie's controversial Halloween 2 movie from 2009. Please like this video, hit the little notification bell for my next videos to drop. Please subscribe to my channel to see future Halloween reviews, including my ranking coming up in a few days of the entire franchise, as well as other horror movie reviews and my 31 horror movies of October I got coming up. So thank you for watching and have a great day. Stay scared.